Okay, welcome to episode number 2 of the Taking Umbrage podcast show thing. I am Jason.
And I am Kyle.
We forgot to introduce ourselves the first video, but that's okay. Now you know. Today's ep, we're going to go into the receivers, the backs, the tight ends, people that will help these quarterbacks.
Weapons. Dangerous weapons.
Yeah, okay. We'll see how good those weapons are on the Seahawks this year without Russell Wilson throwing to them.
Hey, I got takes. You're gonna hear them.
All right, let's go.
All right. So what I'm taking umbrage with here is the DK Metcalf slander. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff, just getting ready for the season, and I've been hearing people talking about DK Metcalf as like outside of the top 24 wide receivers, and I just like I want to freak out. I want to freak out on people. Okay, just first of all, again, I value talents over volume, just because I feel like talent is easier to predict than volume, and that volume is actually a function of talent, not the other way around, right? So your fantasy production is, yes, a function of volume, but volume is a function of talent. And I think it's a lot easier for us to predict the talents of a player versus the system that they're going to be in and the kind of volume that they're going to get. And DK Metcalf is a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL, you guys. Go watch him play. Watch him play. He's incredible.
He's pretty great.
So before I mentioned Geno Smith is like, in my opinion, his kind of a ceiling is like a mid quarterback 2 and down to probably like a lower end quarterback 2. It's kind of a ceiling, and what I expect him to come at is like, a guy you could spot start. But just looking at like mid quarterback 2s and worse, right? So looking at quarterback 16 and worse, you can see here the wide receiver and or weapon finishes of quarterbacks who have finished 16 or worse. This is just from last year. If you look any other year, you're going to find a similar thing. One thing I want to note, I put the tight ends there, the equivalent of whatever wide receiver spot they would go in. I think this is non-PPR finishes, by the way. Or maybe, sorry, this is PPR finishes. So
yeah, everything I've been doing is PPR also.
But what's one thing that jumps out at you here? Do you notice anything just looking at this?
There's nobody above wide receiver. Well, wide receiver 10, that's pretty good. I was actually surprised. I didn't realize Deontay Johnson did that well.
Yeah, so one thing is
there's not more than one. There's not more than one good receiver. There's not more than one receiver who's a wide receiver 2 on the team.
Bingo.
There's only one.
Exactly. That's kind of the big takeaway. You can go back, you can look at other years, 2020, 19, 18, 17, whatever. Generally, you're going to see a pattern that you're in an offense where you have a quarterback who's average to below average, like kind of in the range where I expect Geno Smith to be. Is you're going to have one receiver or one receiving weapon that is going to perform at a high level. You're most likely not going to get to. You're most likely not. Another thing too here is like they dominate. They dominate the wide receiver 2 ranks. We have 18, 19, 20, 21, 24, 25, 27, 28, right? Like we have all these guys these are wide receiver 2s. The best wide receiver for a mid, like an average quarterback is a wide receiver 2. On the high end, there's still some ceiling. There's still top 10 ceiling. We have Deontay Johnson as top 10, right? But you're going to get one of these guys that is going to perform well. Now, I would argue DK Metcalf is a better talent than every single one of these receivers here. I would also argue that Tyler Lockett also is probably a better talent than every single one of these receivers here, but also for sure better than all of these wide receiver 2s here, at the very least.
He's old. He's old. Come on.
He's 29.
He's old.
fine.
He's old.
He's fine.
I know. I am
He had his best year ever last year. It was his best. It was production-wise, last year was his best year ever. Anyway, with that said, my argument basically is I think that DK Metcalf is going to be the one receiver that Geno Smith is able to support. Geno Smith will be average to below average and will only be able to support one receiver, and I assume it's going to be DK Metcalf. We had 3 and almost a half starts from Geno Smith last year. Looking at the target share is really interesting. First of all, he threw to wide receivers a lot, and tight ends and running backs basically not at all. Just looking at the rates at which he threw to tight ends and running backs, we have 28th in the NFL. If you extended that over the whole season, just the rates there, and running backs was 30th. So don't expect a lot of targets for Noah Fant. Don't expect a lot of targets for Rashad Penny. I have a comment about Rashad Penny as the third down back later, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, he's going to throw to his wide receivers quite a lot. And actually, in the games that he played, Tyler Lockett had a higher target share than DK did. DK was like right around the same target share as he had over the past few seasons. Tyler was higher, but that was really because it's a small sample size, and there was one outlier game where they played the Jaguars, and he got 13 targets. If you look at his other games, he got 12 passes on 13 targets in that one game.
That was more about you saying Jaguars.
Well, I'm just saying.
Sorry.
He performed well against a bad team and got a lot of targets against a bad team. And when we played the better teams, DK Metcalf got significantly more targets. His target share was consistent week in and week out with Geno Smith, and really pretty much week in and week out for the entire season. But looking at the value of those targets, though, Tyler Lockett had 8.9 fantasy points per game in Geno Smith games. And I adjusted that again for basically 3.38, considering he played 38% of the snaps in that first week, right? He was 8.9 points per game when Geno Smith was the quarterback, 11.6 in starts. But if you look at DK, he was 19.3. And just to kind of put this a little bit in reference, Justin Jefferson was the wide receiver 4 at 19.3 points. So the ceiling with DK, with Geno, is as high as we have assumed his ceiling could be over the past couple of years. He still has that same ceiling. 16.9 in Geno starts, tied with the same guy here, Deontay Johnson, for wide receiver 10. He still has a top 10 ceiling. And I think that he is the favored target, and he is going to get the more value out of Geno Smith being the quarterback. And it has to do especially with the way that Geno throws versus the way that Russ throws. I'll talk about that more in a sec, but looking at Tyler Lockett there, we have 11.5 was the closest to what Tyler did in Geno starts. He was wide receiver 40. And Marquez Callaway was a very nice wide receiver 69 if you were to look at in just the games played and extrapolate that over a season. So I don't think Tyler Lockett's going to return value. I love Tyler Lockett. I think he's an amazing talent, but I just don't think he's going to return value. And I think DK is. We're going to see one guy.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett, I don't think anything changes for Tyler Lockett, right? He's just at this point, nothing changes, but he's just very much more the best ball type of player that you get late and you have him on your bench because you know he's going to have a week or two, maybe 3 or 4, or even where he just catches 2 touchdowns for 120 yards on like 3 catches or something ridiculous like this. It's going to happen.
His efficiency is still going to be really good.
Yeah.
Like for real life football, in my opinion, Tyler Lockett is the most underrated receiver in all of football. I think he's probably like a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. He could even potentially be a top 10. Like PFF had him like firmly as a top 10. I think he maybe even top 5 receiver this last year.
No, they didn't.
Hey, I'm just telling you.
No, they didn't.
Go look it up.
I
Go
did look it up because that's in my section about Hunter Renfrow. Who's ahead of Ty Lockett and DK Metcalf,
I'm talking out of my
by
ass.
the way.
I don't know. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm frustrated about how people are talking shit about DK.
Don't worry, we have references. I have the references in the end.
All right, we'll get there. We'll get there. I'll fact check you. I'll fact check your fact checking a little bit. Tyler Lockett, he's an incredible receiver. Like his true catch rate is something insane, like 90%. Like the guy doesn't drop passes. He's never wide open, but always open. Like he's not a guy that gets a lot of separation. Anyway, my point being, like, yes, your evaluation of like he's going to have boom bust weeks is absolutely correct. He's still going to have some good weeks. You're just not going to know when they're going to come. And his efficiency in terms of his true catch rates and his yards per target, stuff like that, is still going to be like quite high. But it's just not going to be the overall output, fantasy output that you want. Okay.
Yeah.
So, with that said,
moving on.
Next one here. Looking at fantasy production. So Geno Smith, I kind of went and actually calculated like through the air, through passing, how many fantasy points did Geno Smith create this last year in the games that he's played. There was 163.7 PPR fantasy points created. DK Metcalf got almost 40% of those points. Right? He was going hard at DK Metcalf in high value situations in the red zone. And also he was able to get past to DK in a way that allowed him to get better yards after reception than Russell Wilson does. Just looking at DK's fantasy production for the rest of the season. On the season, he had 14.4 points per game. He was wide receiver 25, which is like not good, especially considering the talent that he was. But here's the thing. That 14.4 was like 90% of the result of Russell Wilson's injury, and not in the way of like, well, because Geno didn't give him as many points, because obviously he gave him more points per start and more points per game played than Russell Wilson did. But the issue was when Russ was not healthy, he didn't want to throw to DK because of the kind of routes that DK wins at, kind of player DK is, and how Russ likes to play. He tried to play it very safe. When he was hurt, he played it very safe. And he liked to throw to Lockett more than DK when he knew that he wasn't healthy. And for whatever reason, I've got a stat on this later, every time he threw to DK, it was just like a wonky, awful pass. like most of the time. It's kind of crazy. But so even if he, like looking at a healthy Russell Wilson starts, he was wide receiver 12 in points per game and wide receiver 5 in healthy quarterback starts. So I exclude weeks 10 to 15 in that, because if you go back and you watch Russell Wilson play weeks 10 through 15, you will not say that guy was right. There was a problem, like a clear problem. Like his finger was a serious issue in terms of him throwing the ball to his receivers, right? So the point being here, the ceiling with DK Metcalf is still like, the ceiling is still top 5, right? He still has top 5 ceiling. And he's being talked about like he's on this bad offense, bad quarterback. He underperformed this last year. He's not going to be good. He's wide receiver 2 at best. And he still has the same ceiling of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, all these elite guys that we're talking about and drafting in the first or second rounds in drafts. He still has that same ceiling, even though Geno Smith is the quarterback.
Okay.
Looking at Tyler, on the other hand, I don't think he's like where he's being drafted right now is probably fairly appropriate. Like he's going pretty late, considering where he's gone in the past. And I think that's fair. Just looking here at like how much better he did with Russ than Geno. Russell Wilson, for the style of passes he likes to throw, Tyler Lockett is the perfect receiver. And this kind of goes into why I'm a little bit lower on Sutton than I think a lot of people are. That I think people are talking about Sutton like he's just going to be like the DK for Russell Wilson. If you look at those two players, DK is so much more talented. It's not even close. It's not like they're not the same at all. They're just not. DK is so much better than Courtland Sutton. But I even think the idea that Russell Wilson is this great deep ball passer, it has more to do with his connection with Tyler Lockett and the kind of player that Tyler Lockett is than it really has to do with him just being a great deep ball passer. He's a great deep ball passer to Tyler Lockett.
Yeah.
He's not particularly a great deep ball passer. I mean, he is a great deep ball passer, but he's not especially great to anybody because he did not actually pass the ball down the field all that well to DK Metcalf this last year. He did to Tyler, right? And so you can see that in the points per game here. Like, especially when Russ was unhealthy, he favored Tyler more than he favored DK because he had that kind of comfort in the relationship with him, and the style of plays align really well. Whereas with Geno Smith, he got a 21% share, 22 almost, compared to DK's 40% share of fantasy production, right? So
I'm pretty sure that in that article
Sorry?
that I cited earlier where I said that Derek Carr is ranked 9th in deep ball accuracy, they had Russell Wilson as number 8 in that article.
Yeah, but that's because of his connection with Tyler Lockett. Look at Tyler Lockett's deep ball stats. And
so you're trying to go deeper on that deep ball stat. It's not just in general, it's in specific to Tyler Lockett. And when he doesn't have that chemistry, he doesn't have that guy that he knows and trusts, maybe he found it in Sutton. Maybe Sutton's his new boy, maybe.
I just don't I'm fading. I am absolutely fading. Like, where people are talking about Sutton. We can talk about this on another episode, but anyway, I'm fading.
Yeah, we'll get to the Broncos eventually.
Let's ride. So on my point of Russell Wilson just inexplicably not being able to throw the ball well to DK Metcalf, just look here at the target shares and catch rates between Russ and Geno with Tyler and DK, right? So with Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, 24% target share. That's pretty consistent year over year. Catch rate, 70%. True catch rate was even higher than that, but catch rate is 70%. But with Geno is 63 on higher target share, right? Look at DK on the other hand. This is what is really, really stark and just stands out to me. Pretty similar target share, but look at the catch rate difference between these two. When he's got Russ throwing to him versus Geno. When Russ is throwing to him, he had a 53% catch rate.
That's bad.
That's bad. That's terrible.
But
here's the problem. It's not because of DK Metcalf. It's not because he wasn't catching the balls well. I mean, he has a little bit of a dropsy problem, a little bit, but like it was significantly more so because Russell Wilson could not throw to a player like DK properly. There was like a weird mental thing. I can't even explain it, but just go back and watch all the games. Like the percentage of Russell Wilson's bad passes that just so happen to go to DK is ridiculous. He would have like his what the fuck throws, all of them to DK Metcalf. Never to Tyler. Tyler is always an amazing pass to Tyler. And just look at the catch rate. Like DK can catch well. 23% target share from Geno. 81% catch rate versus 53 with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, that's not really
a coincidence.
Good. That's really good. That's like Hunter Renfrow numbers there.
That's elite. That's elite territory. It's elite territory.
It is.
Right? And it has to do with the kind of player that DK Metcalf is and the kind of player that Russell Wilson is. If you look at the heat maps for Russell Wilson, he does not throw over the middle. It's not that he's bad at it, but he just doesn't do it. Like you can see his heat maps outside of the hashes, bright colors there. We're yellow, we're orange, we're red, we're hot outside the numbers. But you get in the middle of the field, it's purple, it's blue, it's just, he doesn't throw there. It's not that he's not good at it, but he just doesn't like to do it. And if you look at DK Metcalf's success rate, like you have Matt Harmon's perception, for example, and the way that he charted DK Metcalf, his success rate, just look at the kinds of routes that DK Metcalf ran really well this last year. Actually, on the deeper routes, he didn't necessarily run particularly well, but I mean, he still ran well. He's like, an elite receiver still, but compared to like the rest of his abilities, he actually ran routes across the middle, like digs, crossers, slants, these kinds of routes. He ran those at like top 10, top 5 in the NFL this last year. Geno Smith actually throws the ball in the middle of the field. So there's a kind of a narrative that like DK is this great deep ball threat, and I think that he is. Obviously, it's like 6'3", 6'4", crazy fast. Like, like obviously, but I think that he's very underrated across the middle and as a yak player. And Russell Wilson doesn't like the whole yak thing. He wants to throw it along the sidelines where you can toe tap, make it secure the catch, but you get no yards after catch, right? That's why he loves Tyler so much. He's not that kind of guy. Whereas Geno was able to throw it a bit more in the middle, where DK could actually get some yak, where DK could make a little bit more out of his targets. And it shows here. It just shows. You can see the catch rate. That disparity is insane, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a huge difference. And, I mean, you're hoping that that's going to continue with next season. And hopefully it does, if you're going to take DK.
I mean, again, it's a small sample size, but
small sample size.
So I guess my projections here, if we can get to my projections.
Yep.
My high-end bullish case, basically, if Geno hits his ceiling, which I think is probably closer to like a 40% chance he hits that ceiling, and DK is the primary benefactor, we could be looking at like a 300 PPR season, 300 plus points per reception a season for DK Metcalf. I simply don't think that's out of the cards. And I actually, in fact, think that that is more likely than either of these two other scenarios. I think that his season, I put it at like 50% versus these other two, that he ends up on the bullish case.
So you're definitely drafting him. You're looking to target DK Metcalf.
Oh man, where his ADP is right now. His ADP is like he's like 50 overall, and he's like wide receiver 20 something. And yeah. I even think like the middle ground here, he's going to outperform that. Like even if Geno is kind of that average level, and him and Tyler sort of split, I still think a wide receiver 15 to 18 is what he's going to end up as. And
yeah,
I don't think that is the most likely.
Could he be as good as Brandon Cooks was last year with Davis Mills throwing to him? Right, that's your question.
Exactly. I think he's a better talent than that. I think the situation is same, if not maybe slightly better. And the bearish case here is that like it's flipped the other way, and Tyler's the number one, and Tyler kind of has this awesome season. Because just based on history there, we're not likely getting two receivers that are going to be great out of this offense. But I just don't that case. Based on play style, based on talent, based on everything that I know as a Seahawks fan and all my projections and looking at the history and the volume, and I'm so heavy on the bullish case for DK Metcalf, and I'm hearing him talked about like outside of the top 24 wide receivers, and I think that's like a 10% chance. I think it's insane.
It's definitely seeing somewhat of a drop off last season when he was wide receiver 25 last year, right? Is that right?
And points per game. Yeah.
And points per game. And seeing he has a quarterback downgrade. It's a simple analysis of he wasn't as good as he was the year before, and now he has a worse quarterback, so he's probably going to be even worse than he was last year. I mean, I think that's the simple take on it. But you provided a lot of information and data to show why it's very much possible and in the realm of possibility that he finishes much higher than where he's being taken. And it could be much, much higher even. Do you have anything about...
I still think he's got top 5 ceiling. I think probably top 10.
Yeah, I mean, here's some other players that you see are going ahead of him. And just looking at this, I mean, I would say for me, A.J. Brown and Jalen Waddle I would take ahead of him for sure. McLaurin, all the rest of these players, I don't know. I don't know, man. I would say that I like Metcalf more. I like watching him play more as a player. I think that he's the only one that's in a – well, that's not true. Judy, Sutton, and Davis and Robinson all are in better situations in terms of their offense. And
sort of. They're in better situations in terms of they have a better quarterback, but they're not necessarily in better situations that they're the number one.
No, yes, that's true. But, I mean, they have a better offense. And as we all know, good offensive score points, that means good things for the players on the team.
But wide receiver ones score more than wide receiver twos, you know?
That's true. That's true.
Or threes, which, right. So, but, you know, yeah, like you're saying too, like A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, like, are their quarterbacks significantly better than Geno Smith? I mean, what's the difference there?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's the difference between Geno as a passer and Jalen Hurts as a passer?
No, but Stafford just won a Super Bowl. He just showed that he's really good. Carson Wentz, he was bad, but I think he was this is what a weird case where he was bad in real life, but he was actually good for fantasy. I mean, I guess that's not a weird case. That happens sometimes, but he had 28 touchdowns last year, right? He was it's pretty good. And
yeah, but we saw Michael Pittman is just as good as Terry McLaurin, and he finishes wide receiver 19 as Carson Wentz's number 1, and Carson Wentz's number 2 was wide receiver 40-something.
Yeah, so maybe get Wentz some better receivers like he has now in Washington, and he might have a good year.
I'm just saying, Hurts, Waddle, Wentz, and whoever is going to be starting in Pittsburgh is not really any different from Geno Smith. And so why would we be expecting that all these guys are going to do better when I think DK Metcalf is a better talent than every one of those, in my opinion. He's a better talent than all of them. AJ Brown is
AJ
arguable.
Brown?
I think that yes.
They're lateral.
Yes, I think he's better, but it's arguable. I think it's very arguable. You can pick either side on that.
Okay.
But it's arguable. But I would go with DK. But I'm just saying the quarterbacks that they have thrown to them, the offensive volume that they're going to have, the passing volume they're going to have in each of those offenses, it's basically the same as DK. And they're lesser talents. Tyreek Hill is the number 1 in Miami. How is Jalen Waddle going to get more fantasy production than DK Metcalf when he's going to be the number 2?
I think
with a quarterback that's average to below average.
Yeah, I think that in points per reception leagues, Jalen Waddle is going to do just fine. But we'll have to talk about that a little bit later. Okay, let's move on to the running back that you are pretty high on, Rashad Penny. Most people seem to be high on this Walker kid. But I've seen some recent reports about Penny possibly being clearly the lead back and not even being close. What do you have to say about him?
So what I'm taking umbrage with this time is Rashad Penny's incredible value in terms of ADP. Over the last I'll get into a little bit more, but Rashad Penny's ADP right now is if you look on Underdog or Sleeper, lots of different apps and platforms, he's going around pick 100, between 100 and 105. There's just nobody in that range that is going to return the kind of value that Rashad Penny potentially poses. If he is the number 1 running back for this offense, he's going to way outperform that ADP. And even if he plays 6 games, we know he's going to get hurt. He's probably even going to get hurt 2 or maybe even 3 times in the season. But if he plays the first 5 or 6 weeks, I'm telling you, drafting him at his current ADP is going to basically lock up a playoff spot for you. And you can kind of just figure the rest out throughout the season.
It's pretty bold. It's pretty bold.
Just looking at how he performed here this last year, when he took over as a starter, his performances were top 10 running back the second half of the season, basically, last 5-6 weeks that he was the main starter. Just looking through his career, when he's averaged 33% of the snaps, just 33%, he's getting 15.2 fantasy points per game in PPR. Like, in PPR, when I say in PPR, he's not even catching the ball very much. Right? He's when he gets touches, he's producing at a top 10, top 12 running back level. And when he gets 40% of the snap share, that's not even, we're not talking about like when he gets 50+%, like he's the number one. When he even gets 40% of the snaps, he's getting 17.3 points per game. The talent is so obvious with him. The narrative is that like the Seahawks made a big mistake when they took him in the first round and he's this big bust. But he's a big bust not because of the actual talent. The talent evaluation, there's no problem there. Right? PFF had him as the 10th most elusive in terms of missed tackles last year. And that's like, we're talking again about only playing a handful of games. He had a 12.6% breakout run rate, which is like top in the league. He was 3.83 yards created per touch. So that's talking about adjusting for the effect of the offensive line and the blocking in front of him. He was like first in that as well. I mean, he's a top 10 talent at running back in the league. The only issue is health and volume.
Injuries, yes. I think that the biggest thing that people are afraid of is he just can't stay on the field, right?
Right, and my argument is basically where he's getting drafted right now is it doesn't even matter.
It doesn't matter, right?
He's going in the hundreds. It doesn't matter if he's healthy for 6 games. It doesn't matter. The 6 games that you get out of him, you're going to win those 6 games. You're going to win those 6 weeks. Just how good he's going to be when he plays. It doesn't matter if you only get a portion of the season out of him. He's going to return value on that pick just easily. Looking at the running backs drafted ahead of him, James Conner, not as talented. Zeke Elliott, at this point of his career, not as talented. David Montgomery, not as talented. J.K. Dobbins, there's an argument about talent there. Josh Jacobs, not as talented. Miles Sanders. Devin Singletary, Damian Harris, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. None of these guys are nearly as talented as him.
Yeah, but
it's just that he's not healthy.
The only one of these guys, well, let's see. Looking at, remember we were talking about how, where you're drafted is a matter of opportunity and the offensive power that you have. Connor's on the Arizona, Zeke's with the Cowboys, Dobbins is on Ravens, Jacobs the Raiders, Sanders the Eagles. We have a lot of Singletary's on the Bills. We have a lot of good offenses here, right? Obviously with Montgomery, Harris is kind of middling, and Kareem Hunt, who knows what that offense is going to look like. But most of these players are on teams with really good offenses, and they're the number one back on that team. So it's kind of understandable that they're going to be going higher. I know that you're talking about just talent, but you can see why people are putting these other players ahead of them, because they have an opportunity to perform in a team that's expected to perform well. The Seahawks as a whole are not expected to perform well, so it makes sense that Rashad Penny would be so low, and that therein lies the value, right? Therein lies why we think, or you think, I don't know, but why you think that he's so valuable, because you can get him for so cheap.
They were not a good offense last year, and over the weeks that he played, he won people fantasy championships last year. Like if you picked up Rashad Penny before he became the primary back down the stretch, it's possible you won your championship.
So did Damian Harris. He had like 4 touchdowns in his last 3 weeks last year. I know, I had him on my team, and I was like, he helped me ride through the playoffs, and I lost in the championship. But it was because of Damian Harris dragging.
Rashad Penny had like 5 touchdowns in his last 4 weeks. So
that's good. They're both good.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, obviously Ken Walker at some point in the season will eat into his value. But I just think that the head start that you're going to get by having Rashad Penny at the beginning of the year is going to put you in a position as a fantasy manager, a fantasy runner of a team here, in a position where you can figure things out. You're going to have a cushion in terms of wins just based off of drafting this guy early and getting his production early. I'm not saying he's going to be healthy the whole season, but just where he's getting drafted, he's going to be the most valuable player drafted there, just to start the season at the very least. So my point about volume, this last year was the lowest in the Pete Carroll era in terms of plays per game. So just looking at, the kind of production you even saw from Rashad Penny at the end of the year last year, I think that could even be slightly under what he's capable of. Even as amazing as it was, getting like basically 20 points a game down the last 6 weeks or 5 weeks of the season, that might be, like, as insane as that is, a bit muted just based off of our total volume as an offense. Looking at the average, 62. So add 6 plays to that, and you assume that two-thirds of those are passes, 1/3 is runs or something like that, whatever. We're looking at a few more runs a game for him at the very least. And when he gets more volume he gets, the more productive he is. Averaging 22 runs a game, and he pretty much didn't hit that, like, say for I think maybe one game in the 6 starts. So if he were to able to get like anywhere near that, we're talking about a top 5 running back in fantasy football.
That's
if he could get that volume
efficient.
and be healthy.
You can't really expect that that's going to happen with him getting 12 rushes a game and getting 21.1 points per game. Like, that's a crazy efficiency. That's
what I'm talking about. The talent, right? I value talent over situation because of stuff like this. His efficiency and his opportunities is he's a top 10 in terms of efficiency. Every time he gets enough touches to be relevant in a football game or a fantasy week, he is top 10 in efficiency in those weeks. And if that volume, if he just gets 12 rushes a game, 21.1 points per game, like, again, he's going to get hurt. But if he can give you 6 weeks to start the season, you're putting yourself on track for the playoffs just right away.
Trade him in week 4. Trade him in week 5, right?
Exactly. You win your first 4 weeks because you drafted him in like the 9th round, and then you trade him, and then he gets hurt, and then it's a double win.
Double win, baby.
I don't see the problem here. All right, next one here. So
get through this one quickly.
Again, looking at efficiency here, this is my last little point for anybody thinking about Rashad Penny. Look at the opportunity share. I adjusted this for Rashad Penny to basically only account for his last 6 weeks, last 7 weeks, something like that. I forget what it was exactly, but the rest of these, I took out any games they got injured in, or like only played 30% of snaps or whatever. So I tried to be fair about how I adjusted things to not just make it look like Penny's this amazing efficient runner that just because he only played small sample size. So I tried to like make it fair and balanced. Look at the opportunity share. Like the only one that had a higher opportunity share of all these running backs is Josh Jacobs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But then look at the points per opportunity. J.K. Dobbins, so that's his not last year but the year before stats.
Yeah.
1.07 points per opportunity, and James Conner last year at 1.07 points per opportunity are the only two that were higher. And Damian Harris came in just under at 0.95. So the efficiency that he can provide, if he's given the opportunity, is going to put you into the playoffs.
Yeah, and it seems like because of this efficiency, he doesn't need to be the bell cow. It's fine for him to be in this committee. If they do a 50-50 split and it ends up being 26 rushes a game, that's 13 for each of them or something, or 12 and 12, and whoever the third running back is for you guys gets a couple carries per game, then you're still talking about a good outcome for him, right? He's one of these.
Right.
It seems like he's one of the few running back by committee backs that you want.
40%.
Yeah.
He's getting 40% snap share. He's like 17, 18 points per game. Even if he's not the primary guy in terms of like this overwhelming snap count, he's going to get a majority of the opportunities. Like, just look at this. 19.5 points per game.
I can see it.
9.96 points per opportunity. The guy, like, draft him. Just draft him. Where he's going, draft him. But thank me later when you make the playoffs.
All right. All right. I think we've had enough of this Seahawks talk. But I appreciate all
Debatable.
of these.
We can go on for years.
I appreciate all these hot takes of yours. Not hot takes, but I appreciate the takes on the value that you see. I'm not going to give you so many hot takes on this guy because there's no hot takes needed.
Consensus
People,
here.
people are he's set it and forget it, right? Everyone agrees he's at least a top 5 receiver. Some people put him as high as number 1. Davante Adams, the god tier receiver, right? Y'all already know who he is. He's like Kevin Durant. Y'all already know my name, baby. He was PFF's number 1 receiver last year. He's a red zone monster. We saw it. He's a target hog. He's able to win at every level. He is one of the best receivers in the league. I just want to say one thing about him because people always try to say, oh, he has this chemistry with Carr that dates back to college. And that's like kind of weird to me because they're both kind of old. Like they're not that old, but they're both in like their 8th and 9th seasons or something like this in the league. And college was a long time ago. The thing that people neglect to add to this point is the fact that Davante Adams bought a house in Oakland. I believe it's in Oakland. And after Carr was living in Oakland for the first 6 years of his career, 7 years of his career, until they moved to Vegas, they would get together every offseason and throw and work out together. They did that every offseason. We're not talking about going back to college to play together. We're talking about going back just a few years when they would get together on their own because they're friends and wanted to play together. Backyard football at its best, man. Like they know
That's
each
what we
other's
love, right?
tendencies. Obviously, it's not the same as playing 11 on 11, but knowing what each other like, having that chemistry is not something that's from a decade ago. It's recent. They've kept in touch, and obviously the pandemic changed things, and their move to Vegas changed things. But everyone saw that report about how Davante Adams bought that house before he was signed, and everyone's like, he already had a house in Oakland, and people wanted to forget that that's because they want to throw together. Even if Davante Adams didn't go to the Raiders, they would still be throwing together this offseason because that's what they do. That's what they have a history of doing. Adams said this himself in an interview with the Raiders team. I forgot who the guy who was doing the interview was, but it was like on the Raiders YouTube channel after he was traded. Darren Waller. Sorry, draft Davante Adams. He's great. I wish I had him on my team.
There's just you don't need to really don't need to make an argument.
I'm not going to make an argument for him. I'm also not going to really make an argument for Darren Waller. He's great. Everyone agrees again. Top 5 TE. He's in the second tier with Kittle and I think Schultz. I'm not trying to say he's as good as Mark Andrews and Kelsey. Kelsey just got a ton of vacated targets with Hill leaving, and Mandrews is definitely the number 1 option there. And obviously Waller just got a new number 1 alpha dog into his team in Adams, so he's going to get less targets probably. So I think it's fair to keep him in that second tier. Schultz, honestly, I would probably put it 3 even here because I think that he also has the vacated targets with Cooper leaving, and he did very well in the red zone, and he seemed like a favorite of Dak's. And like I say here, he wants to prove he deserves that new contract. He's playing on the franchise tag. He didn't want to sign that tender. He's like, nah, give me my money. I'm going to show you why. And if you're not going to pay me, someone's going to. And he's going to go out and ball this year. Kittle, I don't know what's going on with San Francisco. You hate Trey Lance. I'm indifferent about him, but I do know.
I have thoughts and feelings about Trey Lance. I
They're mostly,
don't hate the guy.
They're mostly ones of that he's a bad at football guy. He's not a good at football guy.
There's some nuance to it. There's a bit more nuance to it. I just think that my big thing is I'm worried that if he's good.
Right. We'll save that for a later show. Point being, Darren Waller is a set it and forget it tight end in the second tier above the do I play this guy this week? Does he have a good matchup? He's matchup proof. Don't worry about it. Put him in there. He's good. All right.
And in terms of a talent, I think it's like Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, and then I would in terms of a talent, I would probably put Andrews
Below him.
like slightly below Waller. It's just how I view them as a talent. It's just opportunity, obviously, for Andrews. As he's
Andrews
the
got
number
the
one
opportunity. Yeah, he's got the opportunity for sure. And he made some ridiculous catches last year. It was fun
receiver.
watching him. I liked watching him when he was on my team last year. I traded for him and was so happy that I did. The last thing I wanted to say about Waller is just that, everyone knows his story. And I like rooting for players that I like. And like, I kind of think he looks goofy, to be honest, when I watch him, kind of like how Gronk looks goofy. Like his body is just like, what is happening on the field? But I like him as a player. I like him as a person. He seems like a really good guy. And I think that for me, that's a good tiebreaker. Obviously he's on the Raiders and I'm a Raiders fan. That's also a tiebreaker, but
And I like rooting for heels.
yeah.
Wrestling.
Okay. Well, he's not the heel, man. I'm sorry.
That's why I don't have any Waller stock. I
He's
got
the
no
good
Waller
guy.
because it's not a heel.
Well, that's why you love Kelsey, right? All right. Hunter Renfrow, the sneaky fast gym rat, first one in, last one out kind of guy, aka an excellent white slot receiver.
Why?
I'm gonna give you some stats on Hunter Renfrow because this dude is underrated. Most people view him as a major regression candidate. All right, I think he was. I believe he was wide receiver 8 in our league last year. He was even wide receiver 7. That's insane that he was that high. He had a ton of catches and a nice number of TDs, and he was the only guy. And people like to say, Ruggs was gone. Waller got injured. Who else was he going to throw to? Deshaun Jackson, who can't catch. Zay Jones, who can't get open, except for that game-winning touchdown in week 1. But those aren't why. He is actually very good. That's why he's good. All right. We've already seen some reasons why he can still flourish. I showed you those red zone numbers. I showed you how all 9 of his touchdowns came in the red zone. His nickname was Third and Renfrow because he was the third down, the guy that they always went to get their first down in college, and it went over into the pros. But here's some more reasons. All right. Let's first look at his yak. It's not that impressive. It's at 4.6. And I also looked at some of the advanced stats which showed his expected yak, that's X-yak, was also 4.6. So basically, based on the catches, the air yards, or whatever, the position of the tackler, he is expected to get this many yak, and that's exactly how many he got. Not that great, right? But if you look at some players, I took a bunch of players that were within 0.3 of the expected yak and their yak. So Tyreek Hill was 0.3. And I looked at players who had 8 touchdowns or more for the season. So players that were within 0.3 of Renfrow's 0 and 8 or more touchdowns. This is the list of those players. We're talking about Renfrow here, who has tied with Tyreek for the second most targets in the red zone. He has the second most catches in the red zone, and he has the second most touchdowns, tied with our boy Mike Evans here. This dude doesn't get the expected yak afterwards because he's just catching touchdowns. He's catching touchdowns and he stops. That deletes all of that yak that he has. He has the ability, but they use him in a way where they just get him. The way you're talking about with Russell Wilson, throwing balls to the sideline and getting out of bounds immediately, not giving him yak opportunities. They're doing that with Renfrow as well, except for they're doing it on third down, where he gets the sticks, gets out of bounds, or gets down, or in the end zone. Of course, you can't get any yak on a touchdown, but would you rather have more yak, or would you rather have 6? I think you'd rather have the 6.
It depends. Am I trying to run out the clock or what?
Well, yeah, okay. Fair enough. Hunter Renfrow is a punt return specialist also. He was a starter for us. These are his stats from his 3 years in Oakland, where he had a respectable 9.8 yards per return last year and a really nice 11.5 yards per return in 2020. Now, he has become a key cog in this offense, and I do not believe he will still be the primary punt returner. In fact, I checked our lads and it showed somebody else. I don't even know who this person is, but someone we picked up in March as being the number one on the depth chart right now for punt returns. But the point of bringing this up is to show he's good in short area quickness, right? To be a good punt return guy, to be able to get those yards, you got to be able to avoid tacklers coming at you full speed when you're stopped, and be shifty and make those quick moves to get any bit of yards that you can. He does that. That's what he's good at. Look at these ranks. 6th in total yards, 2nd in yards per return, and a long of 32. He's not breaking the bank. He's not taking it to the house. He's not getting like 2 80-yard returns, and that's pumping up his numbers. He's a consistent guy who gets the yards that he can get. He's not going to break an 80-yard touchdown. But
return stats show us a lot about a player's talent.
Yeah,
it's a really good indicator.
If you're lucky enough to be a smart person and play in a league that has return yard points like we are, then he could be good for you in a pinch. He's probably, I would see him being more like, how the way the Chiefs used Tyreek Hill, where after his first couple seasons, they were like, you're too valuable. We're not going to use you as your punt return specialist, except for in key situations. And maybe you get, one every other game because we need a big time return right now. And we need you to help us get like 20 yards on this punt return. So that could be some extra bonus points for Renfrow possibly throughout the season. Looking at this, I was looking at the stats of different players who were punt return specialists, and Ayuk was the next viable receiver, like actual person you would start, as opposed to like Amir Abdullah or somebody like that, someone you would actually start for their receiving or running back abilities. And Ayuk was 10th in total yards and 18th in yards per return in 2021. So you can see how much better he was than Ayuk was in that.
Hunter Renfrow, better player than Brandon Ayuk.
I think so. PFF says so. Here's another point. Contract extension. We all maybe know that he was signed to a new 2-year extension worth $32 million with 21 guaranteed. That's not a huge contract, but it is for a 5th-round pick. And it is especially important because he was not drafted by our current regime. I think that this is extremely important because new coaches and GMs come in and they clean house, right? They get rid of players they don't want. They not only didn't get rid of him, they said, we want you to stay. We know how valuable you are, and we're going to give you that money. I'm guessing that Josh McDaniels decided beforehand, Renfrow is an important piece in his offense, and I like his style, and that's part of the reason why he wanted to go there. Just like John Gruden said, the reason he wanted to go there was because of Derek Carr. He loved Derek Carr, and that was one of the reasons why he wanted to get there. I think that speaks volumes about how the coaching staff sees him and how they will be using him. They didn't sign him to not use him, right? And we know from the past, Josh McDaniels likes to use his sneaky fast gym rat, first guy in, last one out, white slot receivers.
Wait, are you saying you guys have a different coach this year? What happened there? I don't remember.
I'm not going to talk about it. Let's talk about this instead. These slot receivers thrived in McDaniels' offensive schemes in New England, all right? There's no reason to think this pattern will continue, especially with the grades the slot machine receives. That's right. Renfrow is not just third in Renfrow. He is the slot machine. That's a great nickname. Vegas, baby. This is the article I referenced earlier that showed that Hunter Renfrow is the 10th best receiver, according to PFF, just ahead of your boy DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who ranked in at number 11 and number 12 in this article. Look at this little blurb they have. 96.5% of catchable targets thrown his way from the slot. 4th best in the NFL. He is amazing. His separation rate against single coverage placed at the 93rd percentile. He wasn't just getting the targets because he was the only guy. He was getting them because he was getting open. Now, we talked about how Davante Adams and Darren Waller are huge threats, big targets. They're going to command double teams. Are they going to double team Renfrow and leave open Adams, who will get them down the field? Or are they going to leave Renfrow in the one-on-one coverage and let him get 12 yards each catch? When you're playing in PPR, he's the perfect type of player that you want to have. Someone who will get you these catches. He'll get you these quick yards, and he's going to pile up those catches. The teams are going to leave him because they have to pick their poison. And would you rather the team matriculates down the field or like hit you with a big play, Davante Adams over the top? I'm guessing that they're going to go bend and break style because most teams don't want to get hit with a 70-yard touchdown. This boy can run routes. They are so nasty. There's one route he runs. I think it's called the China route. I'm not sure. I've heard it called that. I don't know if that's really what it's called, but I remember watching him score at least 3 touchdowns on it. And as much as I don't like Chris Collinsworth, he has some good notes sometimes in his broadcast calls. And he was talking about how Derek Carr said about Renfrow, what I love about him is his route running is so crisp and so unique that he will take the same route that he ran and he will put a little twist on it every single time and make it look a little bit different. It's the same route, but he runs it in a different way. And I'm going to show you a couple clips now so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So this first one is a general highlight, and it's going to show you, I think he 1 season or 7 season on YouTube.
Only way to describe this route, filthy. Look at what he did.
Got him.
How many moves did he put into that?
Count how many moves here he does against Ward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's the same
falls
route.
Down, gets up. He just has the ability
That
to
is the
create
same route.
something. He's going to go out and out. And typically what defenders look for is the second move.
Got him.
This time the third move is
All
the payoff.
4
Something about
touchdowns.
What did you say about double jointed? Did you notice that move?
His
One of the
quick
more
separation.
unconventional double, I would guess.
This is the China route that Hunter Renfrow's making famous. Out, up, and back in.
Hunter
He did
Renfrow.
it last
Going to be right in the slot, going to
The-
go up,
his
option
football
route, break outside.
To me,
Kenny
this is
Moore,
like
he has to
the
play his
flash
leverage.
games
You notice Kenny
to
Moore stayed
recognize, right?
inside first,
He's got the football.
jumped inside to
He's got high football IQ. They have him running those choice routes, and he knows what to do, and he has chemistry with Derek Carr. He's been his only quarterback in the NFL, and they are killing it together. They have a great chemistry together on the field, and you can see it. It obviously built up last year. Carr, speaking of contracts, by the way, Carr took less money in his contract extension. You know why? Because he wanted them to sign and give money to his boy Renfrow and to Waller. Waller hasn't signed his extension yet, but he said specifically, I took less money because I want to have my team win and I want them to sign my boy Renfrow because that's his boy. He's dirty.
He said, I took less money because I'm less talented. That's what he said.
No, that's not what he said. Shut up. This shows that route again, and it shows you from different angles so you can see it. Because
with his size to run over a DB or a linebacker.
And still get a first down to the 2. This is 3rd and 8. Carr had some green in front of him and zips it in for the touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. And our friends at Vivid Seats said there'd be 75% Raider fans, and you can hear them now really for the first time since the opening kickoff.
This is the China route that Hunter Renfrow's making famous. Out, up, and back in. He did it last week against Xavier Howard for the touchdown. And it's so good. It's so lethal a route and so difficult to guard. Why not come?
Because they know what to do. And Derek Carr knows this offense. He knows what his players are doing. And he's going to get the ball there. He was staring him down the whole time. He was staring him down the whole time. That's like the cardinal sin of quarterback play. You're not supposed to stare down your receiver the whole time. And he can do it because, he shouldn't do it. But he can do it in this play because Renfrow's just...
With his size to run over a DB or...
Almost done here. But he's so good. I'm so happy that I've drafted him already and traded for him in other leagues that I'm in. Josh McDaniels' offense. Okay. For the rookie QB, the Pats were a rush-heavy offense. But I went to look in some deep stats here. The Raiders were the opposite of that. I believe the Raiders were actually 8th in passing attempts and 26th in rushing attempts, maybe 7th in passing and 26th. I did a deep dive actually into the McDaniels' offense since he was there, his second stint after he came back from his disastrous first head coaching job. And here you can see the numbers. The Pats play type. So this is the rush attempts versus pass attempts. And this is the ranking, right? So it's not obviously the number. And if you look here, you can see a couple outliers. There were 4 outlier years. In 2015, they were 26th in rush attempts rank. 2016, they were 23rd in pass attempts rank. And 2020, they were 31st in pass attempts rank. And in 2021, they were 26th in pass attempts rank. Now that seems clear why that drop happened in the last 2 years. Because they lost the golden boy. I don't know what happened in 2016 and why the pass attempts were so low that year. But it seems pretty clear that they didn't trust the quarterbacks they had in Cam Newton and whoever else was starting that year and Mac Jones. And they continued with the rush-heavy offense. What I found interesting was that it shows that their offense is dope, okay? Obviously, the Patriots were really good. Obviously, they had Tom Brady. But the offense being ranked this highly in both pass attempts and rush attempts means simply that they have a ton of plays that they're getting off, right? You can't be both in the top 10 or top 5
getting off on plays.
without getting off the plays. So this brings me to Josh Jacobs. You know, we're talking about him being in a running back by committee. We're talking about him not getting his 5th-year option picked up. But we're not talking about him coming off his best receptions year with a great catch rate. We're not talking about the fact that, well, that's not a good thing. 217 carries and nearly 4 yards per carry. That's not great.
That's fine. That's fine.
But we're not talking about the
average.
fact that the Raiders had only 414 total carries. Jacobs had about 52% of the team's total carries at 414. If we look at the Pats seasons, they only had 1 season with that few total carries in the last Josh McDaniels tenure, okay, in the last 10 years. It seems reasonable, I think, that the Raiders are going to run a bit more, and maybe they'll pass at the same rate. So that means I'm expecting, obviously, the offense to be better, to be able to run the ball more effectively while maintaining that high level of passing that they had last year. So if Jacobs keeps that, percentage of the team's total carries, we could see him increasing that total. Hopefully him being on the field will garner a similar, maybe a little bit less receptions. And so he could have similar numbers as what he had last year, which was like 1,100 total yards. That's not bad. You know, having 40 catches, and 1,100 total yards, along with 230 carries, we could say, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. This was a little deeper into what happened. These are the numbers specifically for that Josh McDaniels offense. Okay, you can see the pass attempts rank, and you can see what they had overall when they had Brady and when they didn't have Brady. Basically, Brady's really good.
Yeah.
They pass the ball a lot with him.
Believe it or not.
Because he can keep the chains moving, they also ran the ball a lot. They still were 10th. They still were 458 carries for the season. Okay, like I said, that is how many more than the Raiders had? 44, and this was 17 games, right? So we're talking about even more than that. If we can push up to 450 carries per game, that would be great. 460 carries a game, that'd be great. Not game, sorry, for the season. That'd be great for the Raiders offense. People seem concerned that maybe the Raiders offense won't be that good. They're concerned that Kenyon Drake's back. Maybe he's the one who gets that pass catching volume. Maybe Brandon Bolden will take away some touches. Maybe Zamir White will get some of that. Yeah, of course they will. 52.4%. They're not like, that's not a lot. That's still very little. Just like you were talking about with the efficiency of Penny. I'm not saying Jacobs is efficient, but I'm saying he's going to have the opportunities and he's going to be in a much better offense than the Seahawks. I don't care how good you think Rashad Penny's is versus ADP. I do not think the Seahawks are going to have a better offense. I don't think they're going to score more points. I don't think they're getting more yards. I think the Raiders are going to
I can agree with that.
Have them better, bested in all those categories. And you want the number one running back on that team who doesn't have his 5th-year option picked up and so wants to prove his worth. If the Raiders aren't going to want him, he wants another team to want him. And he's not old. He's 24 years old. He's 1 month older than Najee Harris. He's not old. He's young. Okay. almost done here with my Raiders takes and our show. Daniel Carlson. It's going to be real quick.
Quick. You got 30 seconds. 30 seconds on the kicker. 30 seconds max. Go.
Kicker 1 last year in our league. He was kicker 4 2 years ago. Look at those percentage rates. He's great. I expect him to go down a little bit, but I put him in the top 3 of the kickers because I expect to score more touchdowns and less field goals. Draft that boy. He good. Here are a bunch of references from all the stuff that we have.
If you're insane and you have kickers in your league, then yes, just draft a kicker on an offense that scores points because that's better.
Exactly.
Done.
Yo, thank you so much for listening. If you guys got to the end of this, that's amazing. This was really long.
If you did.
This is really long, and we're going to have to stop. It's getting really late here. It's like 2 a.m. where we are. But thank you so much, and I hope that you'll stay tuned for the next one. Do all that stuff.
Take an umbrage with all of your bullshit takes. Get him out of here.
Get him out.
Get him out of here.
Thanks. See y'all next time.